Hey guys, my name is Loveless and we are back with Quirk Knife. Okay, so this story is just getting heated. Now we're gonna continue. Hitoshi didn't bring up the slug monster again. It's been 2 weeks. Izuku could tell from his looks that his friend wanted to know more, but the green ant made it clear that he was not going to talk about it. Not yet. Their training has been growing more intense, and small patches of sand were actually visible on Dagaha Beach. It was honestly pretty exciting. Hitoshi was flat on his back on the cold concrete ground of the warehouse, sucking on oxygen like it would be cut off at any moment. Hey, Izuku coughed. He's panting quite heavily himself. Hitoshi's head rolled to the side and he opened his mouth to respond, but all that came out was an unintelligible puff of breath. Izuku wheezed. Hey, I have a crazy idea. Hitoshi took a few more seconds to collect himself as he slowly sat up. That's not new information. Izuku stuck his tongue out jokingly and opened up his backpack to pull out a notebook. Just listen. You remember what happened 2 weeks ago? Hitoshi pressed his clapped lips into a tight line and blinked slowly. Are you fucking kidding me? Do you think I somehow forgot you nearly died? Izuku shrugged. Anyways, I've been writing some notes about what happened and what I was able to see. What made you grab the rope? Hitoshi looked even more confused now, leaning back on his hands. What are you going on about this? Just answer the question. Hitoshi sighed. I don't really know. I was just really thinking, but I just saw the rope and it felt. Izuku waited, but then his friend couldn't finish his explanation. Izuku did it for him. Natural? Hitoshi's eyes sparked, and he nodded quickly. Yeah, I guess. The rope felt natural to grab. Izuku hummed and scribbled down more notes. Hitoshi leaned left and right in trying to sneak a peek at the page. Does the rope remind you of something? Someone? Izuku was holding back a smile as he saw the realization slowly drawn on Hitoshi's face. I suppose Eraserhead? Yes! Izuku squealed with excitement. The rope is a similar fashion to his capture weapon. It felt natural. You think I need to use the same support weapon? Izuku nodded fiercely. Bingo! It could work. We need to get you a weapon soon if we want to have enough time to train with it. Hitoshi ran a hand through his messy hair and sighed heavily. Izuku, I think that's a good idea. Izuku's smile fell. There's a but, isn't there? Hitoshi met his eyes, then looked to the ground. But how are we supposed to get our hands on an item like that? I don't have money or any family to ask, and no offense, I don't think you're much better than I am. Izuku struggled to keep his face neutral, but Hitoshi found out about something else. No, probably not. Izuku thought about that night he first met Eraserhead and punched him in the balls. The hero must have been on patrol since he's an underground hero going out at night. Izuku saw Eraserhead only once more since the situation, and the bro hero didn't notice. Izuku had been on his way from the store he was borrowing from when he saw Eraserhead jumping roofs, simply passing by. The man probably had a route, so if he could simply pinpoint when and where his patrol is, Izuku can bound to run into him again. And what are you mumbling about? Izuku's face flushed pink and he shook his head. Just thinking, just give me a week or something. Hitoshi's eyes slimmed suspiciously. A week for what? To just not important. Izuku flopped down onto his back and raised his arms above his head, feeling the hem of his shirt right up his torso. He didn't think much of it until Hitoshi sucked in a sharp breath, his maverick eyes staring at his stomach. There was a particularly large burn mark covering Izuku's lower right torso, a strange blend of red and purple, the fade skin wrinkled and raw. Technically, it was a combination of two burns from two separate people, but that wasn't important. Izuku watched Hitoshi's expression from the corner of his eyes, and the purple haired boy opened his mouth with a puzzled look. Izuku couldn't hold back. Don't, he snapped, his tone dangerous and frightening. It was a clear warning. Hitoshi's jaw snapped shut immediately and curled into himself with a sharp tone, staring at his hands. Izuku knew he should feel bad. He wasn't Kachan for Kame's sake, but still he felt angry. Izuku stood collecting his knives, quietly setting up recyclable cans as targets around the room at a safe distance from Hitoshi. He rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck, beginning a decent quick walk around the room, throwing the knives at the targets, hitting 5 of 7. How do you do that? Hitoshi spoke up in mid-stretch, bending halfway to touch his left foot. I don't know. Izuku bounced, happy with the change of subject. Math? Hitoshi? No, wait. Magic. Izuku smiled and recollected his knives. Hey, you said you wanted to head down to the cafe you wanted to show me? We can go now. Izuku gave a quick glance to his backpack, checking the cash he received from an older couple cleaning up the market stand that he had knocked over earlier that morning from a villain attack. It was enough for a cup of coffee. Sure. Sure. Hitoshi yawned and cracked his back dramatically. My legs are sore. Quit whining, Izuku winked. Just make sure you thank me when you're a hero. Izuku pretty much skipped down the sidewalk. Hitoshi slouched at his side, his hands stuffed in his pockets. What's got you so chipper? Hitoshi grumbled when Izuku frantically apologized to a woman he'd run into. Izuku flushed. He didn't want to actually admit the real reason why he was so excited. Telling Hitoshi he's never gotten food with a friend before, no thank you. Just excited for some coffee. Izuku lied easily, adjusting the new deep red beanie he had borrowed. Hitoshi smiled slightly. Hey, do you have allergies to cats or anything? Izuku tilted his head and his eyebrows pinched together. Huh? I don't think so. Why? Hitoshi stopped in front of the small door and spoke in an excited tone. We're here. Izuku looked at the large window into the shop, the warm wooden aesthetic literally screaming its name. Izuku stuck to Hitoshi closely, squeaking slightly when something soft brushed against his exposed part of his ankle, followed by the high-pitched meow. Hitoshi Shinso! Izuku gasped. Are you a cat person? Hitoshi was already crouched down, scratching the elderly white cat on the underside of his chin. What? Hitoshi mumbled shyly. I like cats. Izuku found himself giggling as a black cat clung to the underside of his leg, practically begging for attention. I would never have taken you as such a softie for little animals. Izuku smiled finally. It's nice learning something new about you. Hitoshi was clearly thinking about something, then opened his mouth to speak again. Then maybe you should return the favor. I don't know much about you either. Izuku's stomach dropped as alarm bells went off in his mind, and he had to force the anxiety down and nodded jerkily. Maybe. Let's get some coffee, though, or I might die. Hitoshi rolled his eyes. Such a drama queen. Staring at the menu, Izuku was shocked by the prices. Free cat pettings and cheap prices? Damn, sign him up. Hi. Izuku bounced on the ball to his feet while he ordered. I'll just take a large cup of coffee, no sugar, no milk, and a muffin, please. Chocolate chip. The man nodded and held a hand out while Izuku dumped the change into his palm, giving a few coins back. Hitoshi ordered black coffee with some fancy lemon pastry thing. Izuku wasn't sure how to pronounce it. Maybe it was French or something. Do you think I can steal a cat? Izuku leaned over and whispered while they waited for their orders, currently eyeing the first black cat. What? Hitoshi lightly smacked the back of the green head. No, don't do that, Izuku hummed. I could probably do it. I said no. Izuku opened his mouth to argue back, but the barista called out, Deku! And he beamed, bounding forward. He missed the way that Hitoshi frowned. Izuku chose a small table in the back corner of the string lights, sitting in his chair and his legs crossed and his coffee mug drawn to his nose. I haven't had a cup of coffee in ages, he said quietly, carefully blowing the steam away. His mom used to make him coffee once in a while, saying that if he drank too much, it would stunt his growth. Oops, maybe she was right. Hitoshi cocked an eyebrow in a statement. Why not? Lying came too easily to Izuku these days. Meh, just haven't gotten around to it. My mom doesn't allow coffee at home, saying I'm too young still. Hitoshi seemed to accept the response as he crouched down and let a cat sniff his hand. So? Izuku took a slow sip of the hot coffee and parroted him. So? Hitoshi sat up straighter and sighed. Listen, I've tried to give you space. It was a stressful situation after all. Izuku didn't want to have this conversation. He's already have too many lies that are beginning to pile up. So many more until he slips up. But I want to know who the blonde was. He called you, Deku, and we ran. Was he going to hurt you? Or is he just a stranger? Hitoshi didn't seem to realize he was overwhelming Izuku with the rapid-fire questions. But the black kitten did as it rubbed against his chair, sitting close. Izuku clicked his tongue nervously. What was the best way to get out of this inconspicuously? He doesn't want to lie, but he doesn't want to tell the truth, so he'll just balance in the middle. I know him, yeah. Izuku began slowly placing his mug down on the table and tracing the rim with his index finger. It's someone that, we didn't get along very well, I guess. Hitoshi cleared his throat and spoke again. Izuku, you risk your life for him. I'm gonna need a little more information than that. Izuku's frustration was growing, but he took some quiet, deep breaths and decided to continue. We might not get along, Hitoshi, but he's someone I unfortunately can't let die. His words had some bite to them, and Hitoshi picked up on the tone to not push any further. Izuku thought the small little box he was trying to chain up inside was spilling open, and he had more to say. I talked to All Might after, he blurted. Hitoshi's maverick eyes snapped wide, and it wasn't the first time either. Hitoshi leaned forward onto his elbows, mouth opening and closing like a fish. All Might? Yeah. Hitoshi looked at his hands and with his eyebrows drawn together for a long moment. Do you want to tell me what this conversation was about? Izuku picked at some dry skin around his fingernails, staring down at the healing scabs and the skin on his palms. The first time, I actually got attacked by the slug villain. Hitoshi slammed his hands down on the table, ignoring the strange looks that he got from other customers. That's the type of shit you gotta tell me, Izu. What the hell? He shouted. Izuku cringed, but didn't want to feed into the argument. He instead bent down and placed the black kitten on his lap, running his shaky fingers down its back. I asked him a question that I've always wanted to answer to, but I thought... Izuku trailed off, his voice growing more quieter. I asked him if I could be a hero without a quirk. Izuku didn't feel a lot of things besides anger, but right now he felt maybe sadness, grief. Hitoshi was watching him with wanting eyes, and Izuku's voice came out a little more broken than he intended to. He told me no. All Might told me I couldn't be a hero. Hitoshi had a blank expression, but Izuku noticed the way his hands clenched the edge of the table, white-knuckled. The tired expression contorted for a moment, but then settled. And the second time? Izuku nodded. After the, thing, right. He found me on my way home. Ew, that sounds creepy, but he didn't mean it that way. And he told me that I inspired him to save the boy. Izuku stopped talking and Hitoshi made an urgent gesture with his hand. I can tell that there's more for you to say. All Might then told me I could become a hero, and I responded with I know. Hitoshi cocked his head. I thought you didn't want to be a hero. I don't, Izuku said quietly, but that doesn't mean I couldn't do it. And even if I couldn't, I just wanted to say that to All Might. He asked to... How does Izuku sneak by this one? He asked to train me, to help me become a hero. Hitoshi opened his mouth, but Izuku was quick to cut him off. I said no, I didn't want his help. Much to Izuku's surprise, Hitoshi nodded in agreement. Good, he sounds like an ass. Izuku felt much calmer with Hitoshi's answer, and he slunk low into his chair. I guess heroes just aren't more me. I meet All Might, get mad. I meet Eraserhead. I punch his balls. I never get over that. Izuku smiled as he finished the last of his coffee, and the two sat in a comfortable silence. Izuku struggled not to devour his muffin in one bite. To be fair, he hasn't eaten since yesterday morning, and the chocolate chip muffin was really good. The two stood to leave, and Hitoshi glared at Izuku, who simply pierced his lips. Don't make me say it, the taller boy said stiffly, and Izuku groaned dramatically, pulling the black cat from his shirt. Bye, kitty, Izuku said with a very childish tone. See you later. Hitoshi rolled his eyes and smiled, and the two stepped out of the cafe door, not noticing the pair of eyes following them. Shota was half asleep, slunking over the cafe table until he received a sharp kick to his shin, quickly snapping up with a scowl. Before he could hiss an argument with his husband, Hizashi's distant look towards the door sharpened his senses, following his gaze to two teenagers. Their backs were to them, but one tall boy with purple hair and the other one with red beanie and nothing out of the ordinary. They stepped out and Hizashi's eyes snapped back to Shota's. Did you see that? See what? Shota's deadpan. I saw two teenagers. Hizashi nodded fiercely, like Shota was supposed to understand this conversation, but he was completely lost. Sho, Hizashi whined. The kid looked like the one... Stop. Hizashi's jaw clamped shut, and Shota pinched the bridge of his nose, then running a hand down his knotted hair. Hizashi, I know you've been working hard on the Midoriya case, but you claim to see this boy twice a day. I need you to take some deep breaths. This isn't going to help you find the boy faster. Hizashi's face screamed frustration, but he took a deep breath as told and flattened himself against the table like a child. The police are no help, Sho. Guilt pulled in Shota's gut. He knew he might have some possible information on Izuku Midoriya, but he wasn't sure. He never told Hizashi about finding the boy, possibly a missing child, at 3 a.m. at the site of the incident. Well, I've been looking. You have me, Shota said softly. Hizashi looked up. I hope you've been looking. You have the extra time. The black-haired man scrunched up his nose. What is that supposed to mean? You expelled your entire class, like 20 students, Sho. You really need to stop doing that. I have my reasons, Shota drawled. Hizashi looked unconvinced, and he crossed his arms. Yeah, and what are those reasons, my beloved little gremlin? Gremlin? That's a new one. Harsh, Shota mumbled. But I'll explain. Children are often naive. It's in their nature. but that does not include egoism. Egoism and selfishness, a hero cannot be that falls into those categories. Do you agree? Hizashi nodded immediately. Of course, but how do you judge your entire class as such? Shota hummed. Simply by their actions. I gave them multiple chances to prove me wrong, believe me. Yet all they saw were quirks. They were too blind to see what was behind the power. They value the quirks over a person. It's how they judge character. They all saw themselves as top dog because by their powerful quirks, yet all of them failed to see their weaknesses. Without noting your weaknesses, you are unwilling to improve. The blonde mulled the words over for a brief moment, so they wouldn't admit the parts of them that weren't perfect. Exactly. We all have our imperfections. Yet the first step to perfecting those is admitting they exist. Hizashi clicked his tongue. Okay, I'll give you points for that one, but all of them? No. Then what about the others? Recklessness. Hizashi laughed. All heroes are reckless, especially young heroes in training. No, there's a fine line between recklessness and carelessness. The lack of motivation. I'll give you an example. Shoto sat up straighter and paused to bend down to scratch a cat's back, his husband waiting patiently. A past student of mine ran into a situation unprepared, but not by choice. There was a victim inside of a collapsed building, and the student decided to take the risk in going in after them, perhaps a reckless decision. Now, a student I expel, they work with the team, but split off so they can win it by themselves, thinking they could handle it on their own. They were jumped by the other team and actually costed their team the win because their quirk was vital. That is simply careless. A strong difference. Hizashi didn't respond this time, and Shota continued. The meaning of hero is getting lost in the system, Zashi. It's all about money and fame now, instead of selflessness and heroic acts. Hizashi hummed and pointed his finger at the gruff man. But people have different drives. Perhaps, Shota mumbled. But drives and obsessions aren't the same thing. Obsessions for fame and attention is not what a hero meant to be. He continued once again. Kids are being raised by poor morals, taught that their quirks make the character. They're all given these superiority complexes based on the stats of their power and what causes the cracks in the hero society. Hizashi laughed. Alright, maybe I'm convinced. Yet you're the one to talk about morals working with illegal vigilantes of sorts. Shota simply shrugged. Well, yeah. The good ones, at least. But there haven't been any recently. It's like they're all gone missing. Guess the heroes have been chasing them off the streets. No, I believe that as long as vigilantes don't injure the innocent and willing to help, I have no complaints. Hizashi chuckled lightly. That's still illegal. Shota looked down at his hands and pierced his lips, speaking quietly. But that doesn't make them villains. It was late at night, maybe even early morning at this point, while Izuku found himself alone on Dagaha Beach. He was going back and forth, his knife throwing and cleaning. Then he suddenly tripped over something buried strongly in the sand. Oh, fuck off, he moaned, and when the sand stung the healing wounds on his hand, he wiped them on his leg carefully. With a grumpy expression, Izuku turned to the culprit of his fall. It was some sort of motorcycle helmet. With curiosity, Izuku dug it out of the sand and flicked off the dirt to the best of his ability, eyes roaming the object. It was still in one piece, the gray paint all scratched and chipped. The helmet came to a sharp pointy chin on one side, a visor tint black. Why would someone throw this away? Izuku stood up and held the helmet above his head, stretching his arms in the process. He thought about the slug villain and how none of the pros helped Kacchan. They gave up when things got too hard. Izuku didn't give up. Oh, he groaned. This is a bad idea. Definitely a bad idea. Someone stop me. Any objections? He looked around the empty beach and nothing but sound of waves and the wind responding. Great! Izuku cried. No objections. Looked like the verdict has been reached. And hey, it only made sense. Since when has a bad idea stopped Uzuku Midoriya before? I love it. Yes, this is the beginnings of a vigilante. Woohoo! I just love this. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so if you're loving this story too, you know what to do. If you want to listen to me read more, or you can read by yourself. Have fun. Because I am. Bye-bye.